Hi, folks. I'm Oliver Libby, the host of The Owl Factor and co-founder of HL Ventures and the Resolution Project. As you know, on The Owl Factor, we feature meaningful conversations with true leaders about the nexus between leadership and trust. The intimate relationship between these two traits that power the human experience is worthy of our deep understanding. Each episode features a different leadership precept. And what we're focusing on today is you won't get anything you don't ask for. So with that, let me welcome our amazing guest for today, Alexa von Tobel. Alexa is the founder and managing partner of Inspired Capital. Prior to Inspired Capital, Alexa founded LearnVest in 2008 with the goal of helping people make progress on their money. After raising nearly $75 million in venture capital, LearnVest was acquired by Northwestern Mutual in May 2015 in what was one of the biggest fintech acquisitions of the decade. Alexa joined the management team of Northwestern Mutual as the company's first ever chief digital officer and later chief innovation officer. Not content with that, Alexa is the New York Times bestselling author of Financially Fearless and Financially Forward. She is also the host of The Founders Project with Alexa von Tobel, a weekly podcast with Inc. that highlights top entrepreneurs. She's an inaugural member of President Obama's Ambassadors for Global Entrepreneurship and has been honored with numerous recognitions, including a Forbes magazine cover story, Fortune's Most Powerful Woman, and so much more. On a personal note, I've known Alexa for decades now, and I'm impressed with every time we interact that despite such extraordinary accomplishments, she remains down to earth, kind, deeply interested in the welfare of others. And so with that, Alexa, let me welcome you to the Owl Factor today and ask you, how are you doing today?
Oliver, I'm like, can I just spend all my time with you? That was such a nice intro, and I really am deeply committed to the well-being of others. And as a mom of 3 kids, I'm doing really well. I was just saying I'm so happy to be back from spring break and back into a routine, and just honored that you wanted me to be on. So thank you.
Well, absolutely. I'm so excited for our conversation. And so diving right in here, Alexa, you've had a career that spans different roles and even in different sectors. You've been a founder, you've been an investor, certainly a thought leader, and even a corporate executive. So before we get even more specific, let me start at a high level. How has trust and building trust played into your own leadership philosophy?
It's such a great question. And one thing I will say, Oliver, the older I've gotten, in my 20s, now 30s, I think we all grow, right? We all get better. I think all the things that people tell you, which is as you get older, it's actually more and more humbling. You realize your flaws more, you realize what you're not great at. Trust is everything. It is actually really that simple. Flawless trust. There's no such thing as trust if it's not flawless. And so flawless trust is everything. And I think to building teams, building relationships, it's so important that people know that you're actually there, that you care about their well-being, that you're going to be a great person, that you're going to behave consistently and constantly. I think that's a really important one to building trust. Maybe having toddlers has even furthered that, which is kids rely on routines. They rely on understanding boundaries, and like creating that safety of trust is really important for kids. But it's just as important for leadership. And so I'm really fortunate sitting here at Inspired, the team that I get the genuine pleasure of working with every day. We've overlapped more than 63 years in terms of working together, which is pretty wild. And I think that is, I deeply believe, one of the sort of super strengths of our secret sauce is that there's a group of people that has chosen to come together, that wants to work together, that makes each other better. And I think the fact that we consistently keep deciding to stay together, it is really about trust. And even some of the team that joined me here joined with no contracts. We hadn't legally existed yet. And I just had to say, trust me that we will close this and you'll join the team and it will work. And so it's everything. Again, flawless trust is everything. And we're all human and we all make mistakes and we all don't do things perfectly every day. And to also just know, I think you can keep trust flawless by recognizing when you make mistakes and saying, hey, that was a misunderstanding. Here's what we did wrong. We own it. Like, I think that's a really important part of the equation as well, which is that you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. None of us is perfect. But perfect commitment to other people is something you can constantly maintain, even in your own imperfection.
Yeah, I love that concept of flawless trust. It reminds me, people say it's better to be feared than loved or loved than feared. I think it's best to be trusted, right? It's, you build that ability for people to make the decision actively to be in your organization and to follow you. And, it's interesting, when you started LearnVest, it must have occurred to you that people trusting you with their financial future might be among the most fundamental decisions that they could make. How, obviously with a team that has such overlap with you on all these years, that's one thing, but how do you convince so many users to trust you with their financial future and financial knowledge?
I took that trust so crazily seriously. And, I set out to build LearnVest. I was 23 when I founded it. It was May of 2007. And actually, I dropped out of Harvard Business School December 18th of 2008, so a year and a half later. And I set out with this really simple mission of I wanted to empower people's wallets. Here's the thing, I didn't realize what I was going to have to pour into doing that. But the deeper I got in, I realized, well, if I'm going to lead this company, I need to be a financial expert myself, which I was not when I started. I was good at finance. I was solid at finance, but I became a certified financial planner. I passed, many different exams. And then said, that's not enough. I have to actually be able to communicate and articulate to people. So I wrote, as you mentioned, best-selling books. And it kind of gives you a sense of like, it was miserable nights and weekends rather than just running the company. I didn't do anything for myself. Like I was studying for exams, and my boyfriend, fiance, now husband, he was like, wow, I really saw like a gear on you turn on. But I said, here's the thing about trust also. You have to do it authentically. You can't just say, trust me. You have to say, trust me, because I've done the work. And I remember saying, I can't hire a team of certified financial planners to teach advice to, our users, which at that time ended up being millions of people, without actually being that good myself. And so authentic authentic leadership is something that over time I realized, I authentically can't be many people, right? There's things you could ask me to do, and I could just, that's just not going to happen. Like I'm never going to be able to go and be the best at that. But for what LearnVest needed at the time to authentically go build a platform around America's wallet, I needed to go and do the work. And so one of the things I do really lean on in life is the ability to do the work and roll up my sleeves and do that work. And so in short, when I started the company, I didn't realize to actually do it well, I was going to have to do all of those things. And it was like sort of the boiling frog. I kept thinking, wow, if I actually want to do this well, I need to know who the best certified financial planners are. I need to be one to hire them and to be able to articulate to our users and millions of people about our brand and what we're building. I need to know the work. And so there's this quote that I'll never forget, which is, if you knew what it takes to start a company, you would never do it. I laughed many times throughout the years where I said to myself, yep, that's right. That's exactly right.
Totally.
And I didn't know I'd have to pass a lot of tests and do a lot of things in addition to building a company, which is hard enough.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to me. We're in an era where credentials are, certainly kind of under siege or being devalued in certain ways. But I think when push comes to shove, at the very fundamental level, they help build trust.
Yeah,
Um,
I do think that's right.
yeah, yeah. No, it's something for folks to remember as you think about whether to invest in actually building those credential bases. And did the kind of the way that you think about trust and kind of wield it in a sense change as you got to kind of the big corporate, and then after that as an investor yourself?
That was such an important new chapter of my life. So I sold my business, ended up being really honored to join the management team of Northwestern Mutual, which is now a 165-year-old company in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and a truly unique place in that they've thought about their customers truly for almost 200 years, which is just a different level of commitment. And that was me growing a totally new chapter of my career, which is, you mentioned it, being a leader in corporate America and what that means and things you have to get good at. And the company did a really great thing for me, which is hired 2 executive coaches for me to train me, continue to make me better. And some of my bigger insights in my career have come from, before I got acquired, I hired my own executive coach who just taught me some really important things about just how I function. That actually taught me a really important lesson on how to get better at being effective. Being effective leader is really important. It's not just about being right or being the best. It's actually about being really effective and leading people. And I would say the biggest thing I learned there is leading people through change. Change is really scary for Americans. Part of my undergrad degree was psychology and mind-brain behavior at Harvard. And I remember in my class, the teacher said, change your arms from crossing them like this to crossing them like this. It takes the average person 28 days just to learn something as simple as that. And I'll never forget that because we're just wired to not love change. And so leading through change was a totally new chapter. And I will draw on that for years and years and years in my future. So I was really grateful. It was a totally different muscle. There were parts of it I was really bad at. And then there were parts of it that naturally were sort of normal for me and just getting better myself. And it was sort of a real gift for me to get to invest in myself all over again.
And it's so important for folks who are tuning into this to know that even the most celebrated amongst leaders are still investing in things like coaching and training, because nobody can see everything all the time, right? I think it's incredibly important that you offer that as something that you've experienced.
Yeah, one thing I will say that is just such a no-brainer to me. I grew up an athlete, and I was a diver when I was in college, dove platform. I just likened it to that, which was, to be a good athlete, you have a coach, right? Even if you're wonderful. And I was never like the world's best athlete, but I was decent at it. And I had a coach. And I just remember being like, if you want to get really good at something, have somebody there monitoring you, and you're going to get better. And I don't know this, but this perpetual self-improvement, it's okay not to be perfect. I'm far from perfect sitting here today. But actually having somebody there is such a huge gift in your own life. And it doesn't mean that you are putting your hand up to say, I'm bad or I'm not great. You're saying, I want to keep getting better. And so we do that in sports naturally, but in leadership, in this part of our life, I think there's a hesitancy. And it just was a no-brainer to me because of my background in doing sports, to say, no, I'd love a coach. I'd love the investment in myself. And so again, we do it in physical, why not in mental? Why don't we allow ourselves that gift?
Totally. It's so funny you mentioned diving at Harvard. I wasn't going to get to this question this way, but it reminded me of a conversation I had with Adam Grant, who's another wonderful Harvard diver friend of ours. And I remember talking to him a little bit about this. It's a precept that my grandfather used to talk about a lot, which is this idea that indeed you won't get anything you don't ask for. And I think, your discussion of coaching reminds me of that, especially because you had elected even before your exit for LearnVest to go find that for yourself. So much of building a successful organization is learning to ask for funding, for talent to come join you, for resources of any kind, for thought leadership, column inches, whatever it might be. So the question is, and we'll talk about this for a minute now. For you, how is it that you became comfortable learning to ask for the things that you need?
That's a really, really good question. I feel like I've worked for everything my whole life. That's not to say, I actually mean this when I say this. I'm like, I don't think that there's anything superhuman or special about me at all. I think that my parents instilled in me a really, really special work ethic. My mom especially is just one of the hardest working people, just one of these people who just is constantly in motion, constantly doing things for other people, constantly working. She's a practicing nurse today, and she's been practicing for 45 years. So it's pretty crazy. Maybe longer. Don't tell her that maybe longer. And I think, I don't know, there was just this comfort with, I don't have to be perfect at everything, of course. And I really mean it when I say that everything I've had in my life, I've worked for, and other people have helped me. So it's really important to say, not only have I worked really hard, but many, many, many other people in my life have helped me. My siblings have helped me. My parents have helped me. My now husband, who is my boyfriend, who's been on this whole journey 15 years, literally, I think of him as like my co-founder in everything, has helped me more than any other human that's out there. And so asking for help is actually maybe the thing I'm best at, to be perfectly honest. You're giving me that insight, which is being really comfortable saying, I have a crazy day. Can somebody take these 3 things so I don't drop a ball? Or with kids, hey, I'm not going to be able to manage these number of complexities. Let's get somebody to come in and actually be a second extra set of hands. Or saying, I think I'm doing a really bad job at this. Can you help me? Can you give me that feedback? And so I think actually asking for help is something that I think I do well. And then the other thing I would say is I really have gotten better. I was not good at 18. I was probably okay at 25. And now, mid 30s, I'm far better. I'm really taking negative feedback really well, because I genuinely am grateful for the person who gives me that feedback, because otherwise I was going to continue doing the thing wrong. And so if you take that coaching methodology to heart, people giving you really, hey, this, by giving you negative feedback doesn't mean we're throwing you away. It's like, no, this part can get better. And I'm really grateful when people do that, because I know it's the harder path for people to come out of their shell and say, I don't like that you did this. Can you fix this? Or I think this thing we did was the wrong call. Can we fix it? Or this trait of you needs to simmer. Can you fix it? All of that for me is actually a gift, because feedback is a gift and very few people are willing to give it to you. So when people do it, as much as like I'm still human and it hurts me to be like, oh, sorry, I got that wrong. My first instinct is genuinely gratitude, which that has taken me time to get better at, but it really is gratitude.
Yeah, I've long talked about the fact that very same grandfather, who apparently was the font of so many wise things in my life, used to say that true leaders find themselves in a spectrum between humility and confidence. And you have to be confident enough, but also humble enough, and that right at the center is where true leadership lies. But I think, in what you're talking about, that there's also, bringing it back to our central theme of trust, like when you ask folks for anything, be it feedback or resources or whatever it may, to join your team, there's an inherent trust building exercise there. And so maybe one of the things that I wanted to get at here is, how do you pick from whom you ask for these various things, the feedback, the resource, et cetera? How can one understand where best to go for those things?
I think for me, it's sort of always been intuition, right? Like you pick up on the strengths of what people are really good at. There's certain people who are really, really good at EQ elements or relationship elements or managing a really, my business partner, Lucy, is brilliant at managing for an EQ piece of feedback the right way. My business partner, Penny, just has wild amounts of experience. She's literally been U.S. Secretary of Commerce. She's been in the White House. She's been at the helm of many, many, many companies. She's currently on the board of, Harvard and Microsoft, and has seen things that I, in my tiny little career, have never seen. And so when we're at the start of COVID, as the world literally was like, what on earth are we about? What are we going through? And what are we about to go through? I love drawing on people that have decades more of knowledge. And think about it, Oliver, if we look back, you and I, at our 18-year-old selves or our 28-year-old selves, there are days where I'm like, oh my God, I want to smack her. like how little I knew about how the world works, or the world, or myself. So I really like to draw on people with a lot of wisdom. And I sincerely love asking somebody in their 60s, 70s, 80s for what they know and what they've learned. And some of my best pieces of input in life about marriage, about parenthood, have been from people much, much older than me. So I also don't always ask one person, right? Sometimes it's really good to get 2 or 3 different perspectives, and then the harder the call, or the harder the piece of feedback, or the harder the element, get more feedback, right? Feedback's free, it's a gift. Get more of it. So on simple things, you can ask one person. On really hard, complex dynamics, get many more people's input, and you're going to be better.
For sure. And if you'll allow us to stay on this for one more kind of facet of it, you obviously, when building LearnVest, you were, and by the way, we stack our asking, right? So even as our careers progress and we get more, resources, importance, whatever it might be, there's still a lot of building and asking that goes on. But in the early days of LearnVest, I'm sure it was a lot of, I need, capital, I need talent, et cetera, et cetera. Now, of course, you're in an awesome position of deploying capital and your expertise and wisdom and your feedback. What are some of the things that you've seen successful amongst those who have approached you for that help, and maybe some things that have been less successful for those folks?
Back to this point of people being smart and thorough enough to trust that they are going to do the really, really hard work, and not have such big egos that they can't ask for the things that they don't have. And it takes a while of really getting to know somebody to really get to the core of, like, do they have that ability? But being a CEO, and I've said this before, being a CEO of a company is like being an ER surgeon, where the patient is come in from a terrible accident and the patient needs 7 surgeries. You can only do 1 at a time. a company, and I don't know when I came up with this. I think it was a few years ago, maybe 5, 6, 7. A company is literally a body. It's a corporation. It's literally a body. It's a living organism that has culture and people and change and dynamics and success or not success. And at any time, you are the only human who actually sees the whole body. And every day as a CEO, people are bringing you problems. So at one point I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize being a CEO is just literally being the problem solver of every gnarly, hard, complex issue. Because it gets to you because somebody else can't solve it, or it's too complicated, or it touches too many elements. And your job at all time is to do the surgery. So there's EQ, IQ, intuition, there's judgment. And what I look for, and so the headline is you have to decide which surgery to prioritize first, and in what order do you need to do them. And so there's a strategy muscle there, there's a judgment muscle there. And what we look for in our founders is people who are so wildly committed to a problem that they want to solve, independent of money, fame, success, et cetera. But then that they possess that ability to keep learning and getting better, and take input from others. And we always ask ourselves, would we want to go work with this person? Like, are they that committed in an authentic way? And then on the flip side, do they have the judgment to know when to trust their confidence or get more input? And it's a really, it's not a perfect box, right? So it's really about getting to know people. And I think that's one of the things we look for.
Totally, totally. You are someone who has touched so many parts of our financial sector, financial knowledge, financial training and awareness for people. We're living in a really interesting era for this, and it's fundamental. It's fundamental to how our democracy works, our world works. But we've seen the rise of things like cryptocurrency and meme stocks, and frankly, again, like we talked about earlier, the kind of the deprioritizing or devaluing of expertise. So, is there something of a trust problem developing in how individuals interact with our financial system these days? And what might we do to start redressing that balance?
So the way I process it, and I've thought, unfortunately, just a wild amount about this problem, the way I process it is the following. Our financial infrastructure has gotten standard deviations more complicated, more complex than it was. So let's take both of our grandparents, okay? For the most part, they paid for things in cash. They worked for cash. They lived till 78. That was their life expectancy. And everything that they did, mortgages were often 1 times your salary, not 10 times your salary. The concept of student debt didn't exist. Credit cards weren't really prolific until the 80s, 90s. So you couldn't borrow everywhere. You fast forward to today, the average person who graduates from college starts with thousands of dollars of credit card debt and tens of thousands of dollars of student loans. So they're underwater as they start their life. That was never our grandparents. Then we're living in this really interesting gig economy episodic, which is on a lifestyle amazing. You can control your life. You can be your own, you can be your own captain, but you're getting paid less stably. And for people who have careers, they don't stay at them for 10, 20, 30 years, right? They've changed them many times. Pensions don't exist for them at all, which our grandparents, literally their retirement was paid for by the company that they worked at for 30 or 40 years. And then it comes before crypto. We're not even adding in crypto. And then you add in cryptocurrencies, alternative assets, all these new ways. And the technology where in a blink of an eye, you can have a glass of wine and decide to trade overnight, which on a beautiful side, we're democratizing the technology. But on the flip side, we're actually giving the ability to make mistakes, use your own judgment. And I'm sitting here, a certified financial planner. Money's complicated. It's really, and it's evolving. It's not, the rules changed. So in general, I think what we've done, you asked the question of like how we eroded trust. I think we've moved forward light years in democratizing the technology, giving people the power to control their work schedules with gig work and episodic work and all the things that we're doing. It gives people the ability to make more money. But this generation, the Gen X generation, starts out more financially disadvantaged than our grandparents because of the concept of debt and all of these other things. And then the fact that access to advice is still really, I wish LearnVest was easier to build, and I could have built it for tens of millions of Americans. Access to advice is still guarded with big fees. And so making advice free, making it available to everybody is still something that my heart really wants to see happen, because financial precarity and complexity has gone up a lot. And that's pre-NFTs, and that's pre-crypto, and that's pre-everything else. So I think advice is still absolutely paramount. And for some reason, we don't connect health and wealth. If you're sick, you're still going to go see a doctor. You're not going to question if you can like diagnose cancer yourself. But with money, the do-it-yourself or category is still a big one. And there's just certain things where you really need to talk to an expert.
Yeah, well, I think those are wise words. And although actually my favorite thing I ever bought my dad was your WebMD does not equal my MD, because he's a doctor and people constantly come in and they're like, this is what I have. So it's everywhere. But no, I really appreciate this. And Alexa, thank you. I know we're getting close to our time, but I wanted to close on two questions that we always ask here on the Owl Factor. The first is if there are 2 or 3 leadership principles, trust or otherwise, that have helped power, been Intel Inside for your leadership. What might you share with our viewers here?
I would say working with people that you love is one of the best gifts you can give to yourself. Working with people that you truly love, that you admire, and that make you better, and where that trust is flawless, is really one of the best things you can give yourself in life. It makes work an absolute joy. You get better, and I'm so lucky. The partnership here at Inspired, Mark, Lucy, Penny, and I, is a genuine gift, and so that's one. And then I think the second thing I would say is just, none of us should take ourselves that seriously. We're all a work in progress. We're all imperfect, and we're all getting better every day. And I think just the commitment to constantly getting better, the commitment to leaning into feedback, the commitment to having high standards, having exceptional standards, is really, really important. And then I just tell everybody, my mini motto is get up, dress up, show up, get up early, get dressed, especially after COVID. Like, let's get dressed, guys. And then show up with a great attitude. And I think positive attitudes is one of the most underappreciated assets in this world, and it is free. Bringing a positive attitude to your day every day is a gift to yourself, and it is a gift to those around you, and it's necessary.
I could not agree more. And it's as though you knew what the last question was, which is, we live in some might say very challenging times, certainly times that are bringing so much change and disruption, which, as you eloquently pointed out, is uncomfortable for folks. And so we often focus on the doom and gloom. And so before we let everyone go today, and I thank you, what is something that gives you hope, that you're positive about?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard so many presidents before say, if you meet the next generation, you just are inspired by them. And I really mean that. This next generation cares about the planet, they care about climate, they care about equality, they care about human rights. And just young people always give you tons and tons of inspiration. And sitting here as a mother of 3 little children, really, really I'm inspired for them and inspired with them. And I'm inspired to do my part and to make sure we keep raising that next generation to be the best that they humanly can be, to make sure that this world is the best place it can be.
Well, thank you. That is wise and uplifting indeed. Alexa, everyone from your 3 children to the millions of people that have read your books and been inspired by your work are lucky to have you. I am very fortunate indeed that you've agreed to come on and share this wisdom with us here at the Owl Factor. Thank you. And we are truly grateful to you.
You're the best. Thank you so much for having me. I'm truly honored. Thank you.
Take care.